Hey, hey, how's it going,
Hey,
Dom?
how's it going?
Hey, everybody, welcome to our, I guess it's new and improved sort of live stream. We have better cameras than we used to have now.
Yeah,
We're not like little pixelated
upgraded.
dot heads like we had before, but my camera's mounted a little high, so I got to get used to like looking up
Yeah,
here
I have the
instead of
same thing. It's like above my
you're
monitor.
looking at my forehead the entire time. That's my five head, as it were. Um, but yeah, here we are again in another edition of Hub's stuff that we're showing for I don't know how many streams we've done so far, but we are up to, I don't know, several. Last time we
Yeah.
had the whole team. Today it's just me and Dom. Sorry that
hmm
not everybody can be here today. But um, we're going to be showing off some really cool new features that we've been working on. Dom, in particular, has put a lot of work into this. So um, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at today, Dom?
Sure. So I think the main thing we're going to be looking at today is a new component we added to the Blender add-on called Video Texture Target and Video Texture Source. So Video Texture Target actually started off as the video avatar thing, where you can display your webcam on an avatar. Then we evolved that
We
into just
showed
kind of
that
a
during Hack Week, right?
Yeah, exactly. We showed that was a Hack Week project that Robert started, and then we've evolved that now into just a generic thing you can display video on in a scene. And so then I created this video texture source component that you can add to a camera and point at a video texture target, and then basically the view from that camera will be displayed on whatever material you attach this video texture target to. And this will make more sense when you see the visuals. But there's a lots of things you can do with it, more than I was even expecting. Actually, Jim started showing me some of the stuff he's going to show off, and I was just like, oh, I guess yeah, you can do that by combining all the pieces we already have. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I'll start actually. Normally, I would like dive right into like Blender and all that. I want to kind of showcase what we're looking at first. So I'm going to switch over to what I'm seeing now. And for those of you that maybe haven't been in Hubs for a while, you may not have seen some of the newer UI that we've got going on. So if you're wondering what's that white bar at the bottom with the little um, colored buttons and stuff, that's a newer UI, especially for our Hubs Cloud users. It just dropped this week
Mm-hmm.
onto
Just
those
on Monday,
servers,
yeah.
so you'll be seeing that if you haven't already. So you can look forward to it. So in this scene, this is actually a scene made by one of our artists on the Hubs team, Christian, um, as a sort of a outdoor festival type scene, which is really cool and stylized, and we can take a look at it either today or another time. But I wanted to show what he had in mind when he designed this space. He wanted there to be a main stage for people to get on and be able to make announcements and things like that. But one of the things he was really wanting was a way that everybody could see that person. If you look from my point of view right now, I'm kind of in the front row, so to speak, looking up there at Dom, and he looks really kind of small. And maybe if I get all the way up here, I can get a better look. But if I back up, you'll see what we've got going on either side of the stage. We've got Look at that. We've got video screens.
Yep.
And those video screens are showing exactly what's happening right now on stage. And the way that's set up, at least just from a visual perspective, and this is pretty cool. I didn't know this until I went into the space today. What Christian had done recently was add an actual physical looking camera over
Yeah.
here. If you see it in the back, there's like a boom. What is that? A boom crane
Crane.
kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I'm going to fly up to it. He's got this camera sitting on it. And so the camera's actually coming from this spot. If I'm assuming he set it up that way. I could test
Yeah.
it
Assuming
probably
you
by
can get
just
in front
walking
of
in
it.
front of the camera and see if I block it. Oh, wait,
Yep.
I saw myself for a second. Let me get
Yeah.
here.
There you are.
Am I taking up the whole screen over
Yeah.
here?
You're in front of the whole screen there.
Oh, whoops. Wait,
Here I can
you
do it.
do
So
it. Here.
yeah.
It's easier for me to see you. Oh, look at that. Oh, he's like right up in it. Little
um,
little. It's kind of zoomed in too, so it's
yeah, it has
really
a really narrow field of view and stuff, which is a really cool thing. So like actually you configure all of the camera settings directly in Blender with an actual Blender camera object, and so you can configure like the near clip and the far clip and the field of view and all that, and that all carries over, which is really cool. And like this scene was actually the the kind of driving factor behind it. Christian was like, I really want to do these screens, and I was like, I think we can make that happen. And so we did that. And I'm also working on some other pretty cool stuff for this space. You see, there's speakers in the space. Hopefully we'll have something else to show off with that pretty soon too.
Yes. I've got a little sneak preview of it, but yeah, I'm sure that'll be a interesting thing for everyone to see at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like, so the big question is, how do you set this up? The cool thing is it's really not that hard, especially if you've already used the video texture target, like for an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
The avatar I'm wearing right now, if I zoom in, is one that accepts a video from your computer as a source.
I'd probably not try to do it right now since you're already streaming to the Twitch.
What if I did it? Wait, I'm feeling brave. What if I
Do you have another webcam?
Use my crappy integrated webcam.
There you go. That might work.
No, will this one work? It should be like more right in front of my face, but I don't know. Maybe not. Oh no, I did the wrong button. That's why. Let's try that again. Avatar camera. I picked. There were probably people at home going, "Why did he pick screen?" I don't know why it's not working. Oh, is it working?
It was working. Yeah.
Oh, because I already accepted the permission. That's why. Anyway, that's. Let me zoom in. There I am. So yeah, my head is in here. I'm probably running way too many video sources at once, so I'm gonna stop doing that. But anyway, let's hop on over to Blender and we can take a look at how something like this is set up. Now I don't have the scene that we're in right now to test out, but I can show you in a really simple example. So I'm gonna pop over here to Blender. Oh, everybody knows that cube that we're gonna get rid of. Bye, cube. So if you have not gotten the latest Hubs Blender exporter, you can get that from the URL that was up on the screen a second ago. If I switch back just for a second to here, you see at the top, it's at github.com/Mozilla Reality/Hubs Blender exporter.
I'll link that in chat for everyone to get.
Excellent. Thank you. But let's go back to Blender and talk about this. So once that is installed and everything, there's two things you need to set up. You need to set up a camera source and a camera target. And the source really can be anything, but it makes a lot of sense while you're in here to use an actual camera object. So I'm going to go over to, I'm just going to create a new, well, actually, I'll tell you what. Let me make a thing first, just so we have something to point at. Cube is back. I brought the cube back. But I'm going to bring in, I'm just going to make a regular old Blender camera, which I don't know why the default has it angled like that. I find it really annoying. I'm probably going to, I'm going to make my own, now that I know a little more about Blender scripting, I'm going to make my own menu item that is a camera pointed at
and you can have it automatically add the component for you too.
I could. I should really do that. Maybe in a later stream we'll show how to do that when I'm better at it. But I'm not a pro yet. I'm just zeroing out the rotation on this guy and then rotating it 90 on X. As you know, on the camera, that little arrow is your up, which is very helpful. And for now, I'm going to leave it on this Y-axis, but I'm going to slide it back and have it just point there at the cube. And maybe just move it up a little and rotate it down a bit so it's aimed that way. Now, I probably should switch to the camera at some point so I can actually see what it's looking at. That looks pretty good. Little pro tip, you may want to do a split screen kind of thing here so that you can see what the camera sees and then go back to what you're doing. So right now, I'm going to just use this cube. I'll get rid of the everything but that face, and this isn't really a Blender tutorial, so I'm trying to just keep it simple. I'm going to slide this back a bit. I'm going to actually slide it up so it's not in the ground. It's pivot points at the ground, but just a plain old square will be the simplest thing I do right now. And so the source will be this camera, and in order to put a video source on this, you just need to go to the regular Objects Properties tab, the orange tab over here. And if your add-on is installed correctly, it'll show up here. And you can hit Add Component. And now there is a new one called Video Texture Source. And that's the one you're looking for over in this Scene category.
And you have to add that to a camera object in
Camera
billboard.
object.
Yep.
Yep. Now, in case people are wondering, this camera could actually be a child of other objects in the scene. So if you want to animate it and do other things, I'll show you some of that in a little bit. But the only parameters that are showing on this, and I'll zoom this up so you can see it a little better, inside the video texture source component is the resolution and the frames per second. And this is actually really important because if you're broadcasting whatever this camera sees at like the highest resolution possible, you could really kill performance in the scene.
Yep. And the frame rate too is going to be important. I mean, it's important to remember that this camera is rendering the whole scene, its view again, so it's kind of like twice the performance cost of rendering the scene normally. And so if you're doing that at 30, 60, 100 FPS or something like that, you're literally going to be like having your performance in the room. So definitely try to keep this as low as you can, manage with whatever effect you're trying to achieve. And then keep the resolution to something sane.
For now, I'll leave the defaults, but the other thing to consider is how far away you're going to be from whatever screen you're projecting this
and
on.
how big the surface you're going to be projecting it on is. Yeah.
I mean, it's actually pretty cool if you set it very low, and it's kind of a look to have it kind of pixelated and low res, to try to simulate like a jumbotron at a stadium or something like that.
And depending how you configure your texture too, you can set the sampling mode so such that it is actually pixelated or blurry depending on what you're trying to do, because it'll actually use the material properties of whatever material you're adding it to.
That's actually one of the most exciting parts. So I'll leave this at the defaults for now. Just know that 15 frames per second is going to look a little choppy compared to what it looks like just moving around in hubs, but that's okay. So we've got the source ready, and I like to do that first, mainly because when you go to pick the target, it has to exist, and so I like doing it in this order. So I'm going to select this. Now, this one's a little bit different from maybe some of the other components that you may have seen before. So instead of putting it on the object or the mesh or something, it actually goes on the material itself. So I'm going to create a new material for this. For now, it's just a principled BSDF regular old, sort of PBR shader. But what I will do is scroll down a bit till I find the component area, the hubs area, and I'll hit add component. And on this one, this is still listed under avatar, which is maybe not the best place for it, but video texture target. And then you get to choose on this, and you may have seen this before if you did the avatar, video avatar. Are you going to replace the base color map, the emissive map if it has one, or both? I like to use an emissive map on this, so I am going to pick it. And then the most important thing here is picking what the source is. Where am I getting my texture from? And you need to open that menu up, and it should list anything that has the video texture source component on it.
Yep, this is a new feature I added to the Blender add-on to allow components to point at other components, and this is going to become important as we're starting to think about triggers and other kind of interactivity things. It's going to be important for components to be able to, look for other components, and this specifically only shows, objects in the scene that have that specific component on it. And so this feature is going to allow us to do like a lot more, complex interactions between multiple objects, and so it's really cool. That was actually not too hard to add, which is really cool.
That's great. I really look forward to that because what I'm discovering is that there's so much you can do with all these little components that I think of like just these little Lego blocks, but what you can make out of them is so much cooler than the parts themselves. So, okay, so the source and the target are ready to go. I do need to set up the material properly though, so I'm going to go to the shading tab here, shading workspace, and look at this. Now, the default is just like this white texture. What I like to do is put an image texture on the screen, and this is pretty cool too because you could have that image be a placeholder, like maybe it's just a picture or looks like a little, please stand by or stream starting soon kind of like thing, and when the video gets triggered, it'll just turn on. So
yeah, I mean, right now it's just as soon as the two components load, they'll just immediately connect to each other, so you won't really see this. But in the future, I can imagine things where we'll have the ability to turn this on and off or switch between multiple sources, and then at that point, the texture you include will be important.
Yeah, switching between multiple cameras is like the dream to me, because then you can really set up a virtual TV studio or something.
Exactly.
So for this, I'm going to make a new image, and I'm just going to call it like temp image or something. Doesn't really matter, and the size of the image doesn't really matter either. So you might as well make it pretty small. I'm just going to make like a 32 by 32 pixel black image, unless you want the image to be something else. But again, you won't ever really see this, so I'm just going to plug it in. Now that would be enough. In this case, I also want emission. So basically, if you don't know what that is, I want the screen to really look lit up, not just a color. I want it to look like it's actually, glowing in a sense. It won't glow. I shouldn't say that.
It doesn't have bloom yet.
But I want it to look like, if there's no lights in the scene at all, I want you to still be able to see the screen. So the setup for that involves adding and I just have these on a hotkey, but is to add an add shader here at the end, and then you're basically going to mix together the BSDF node and a emission shader node, and so you plug that one in. Doesn't matter which one they're in. And that's it.
The other thing you can do for this too is you can also just use this as an unlit material if you're not looking to make the screen glossy or reflective or anything like that. It'll be more performant to just use an unlit material if you're just looking to get a thing that's just always bright.
Right, and in that case, the setting for this, for the target, base color map and emissive map, like they're kind of irrelevant at that point. Except for
you still need to have
color.
base color map, but you can just leave emissive unchecked.
So you could remove this and this node, and just use a background node, and you'd be all set. Actually, get rid of that one too, and then just use the background node. So that's it. I'm trying to think. Is there anything I'm missing, Dom?
So there is a restriction currently with the way that this stuff works, where it's not going to be able to render itself, and so you have it pointing at itself, and that's not. I mean, you'll just see nothing in the camera, but that's something that is currently a restriction. We can have it work that way. It's just a little bit more expensive because we'll have to use, two textures and stuff. It's going to have to swap back and forth to be able to render itself. But right now. As of the time of this recording, the camera can't render itself, like its own texture.
Your own head.
The texture target too, like it won't be able to render it. But also that's another restriction too. Like your own head is not going to be visible in the camera right now, but that's a minor.
Other people's heads will.
Detail. Other people's heads will. Yeah.
I am going to do one thing before I export this, just for our own sanity when we're looking at it and trying to figure out where the camera is I'm going to put the cursor here where the camera is, and then I'm going to create just a little sphere or something, maybe a cone.
Yeah,
cone would be good, just so that I know like roughly where that that camera is pointing. That's not very accurate, but that's fine. It's good enough for what I need. And you may be wondering, well, is the camera going to see inside that cone? And you're correct, it would, assuming its back faces are not culled. So I'm going to just slide it, just on its local axis back a little bit, just so it's not in the way of the camera. But that should do it. And I'm ready to export. Now there's one more gotcha, and this gets me every time.
This got me a bunch of times when I was working on it.
I'm going to export as a GLTF.
We can't see that window.
Oh yeah, you can't see the window. That's unfortunate.
Well, anyway, you could just describe it. It's
inside your GLTF export settings, in the very top section where it says there's a drop down that says include. You need to make sure cameras is turned on in there. You probably never really worried about that before, but cameras is a thing that can be exported. So you'll want to turn that on, and then I'm going to drop this in a folder of mine.
And once you change that setting in the GLTF export dialog, you can actually save the settings so that it persists, in other files and other.
So it won't get you again.
Times you export, but you got to be careful with that, because if you had other settings you didn't want to save, it's a bit tricky. But
yeah. Okay, so I've exported it. Trust me that I did, and I'm gonna go back to our scene here, and I should be able to just test this out by dropping it in the hubs room. You don't have to go through Spoke or a whole export process just for testing, which is one of my favorite things about working on the web. Let me just grab the one that I just made. Let me find it. I know you can't see my screen. I'm glad you can't see the rest of my screen because
Yeah, you're showing off your bad file hygiene.
yeah, it would be very bad. So let's drop this in. And where is it? Oh, it's so tiny. But let's zoom it up a bit. Okay, you can see that cone.
Yeah, and so like I said, it's like just seeing through itself. Like the fact that it's pointing at itself doesn't really matter here because
No.
it can't render itself. And yeah, the field of view is pretty narrow, so it's going to be hard to...
Okay, the other thing is that it's using a sort of a 16:9 aspect ratio, and I'm projecting it onto a square thing. So it's going to get all stretchy and weird. I did this on purpose because I wanted to illustrate, like, this is what you run into at first. Oh, it's also sideways. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is
turned.
Yep. But yeah, so I'm in the camera now here.
So this could happen to you, and you can see it is lower resolution than, other things. But let's go back and fix it because that's obviously not what we want. So this was a good example of what might happen to you. So another thing to check here is, let me just check something. Let's see. Let's open up the UV editor. And let's think
about... Oh, and the UVs on this are probably also not correct because you started with a cube, and so the UVs on this are just going to be probably the center of that.
Oh, you make a really good point. That's probably what's happening. Oh, yeah, it's just up here in this tiny... So the camera's seeing like a big area here, and we're only giving you like a tiny square. So, okay, not the best thing I did there, but what I'm going to do is just stretch this out to fill.
You did it on purpose. It's a learning exercise.
Exactly, Dom. You called it.
On our toes.
Thanks for covering for me there. So I'm going to do a project from view on this so that, and it bounds on so that it goes full size. That's like the easiest way to get it there. Again, though, it's still square, and the camera is not shooting a square image. So you could go either way. If you want to make this surface more of a 16:9 look, you can, or you could set the camera to just render square. I'm going to do the square on the camera first, just to show how to do that. So you can go to this, and in your resolution, you would set it to some, double the same value, right? Like, so I'll do 1280 by 1280, since that's what it is right now. But, we could do less. I could do 1080 by 1080 or something like that. And then, or 1024, whatever you want to do. Yep. And then the other thing is in Blender, as Dom mentioned earlier, it does respect some of the camera settings and render settings. So if you go to the output properties, you can set your X and Y resolution here.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the
and now the camera is actually
view
square.
From the camera, exactly. When you're looking at the view from the camera, it's going to be using your render settings there. And so if it's important to change that if you're trying to frame it correctly. And also the field of view gets affected by that too. So if you have that setting correctly, it's not going to be framed exactly like it is in Blender. But if you set that to the same aspect ratio, then that view you get in Blender should be the same view you get in Hubs.
Yeah. So this now will show like the whole surface here, and it's also
although it's not rendering that surface again.
Not rendering the surface, right? I know that's a little confusing. I should have pointed it at a duck or something, but that's okay. I think people will figure it out. But so we got the resolution to match, and we got that, and we've also I should make sure that the UVs are straight up and down, but I think they are now that I projected from view. So let's re-export, and with the
one useful way for the to make sure your UVs are correct is like when you're in Blender, you can have it generate a default image for you that has like letters and stuff printed on it, and then you can use that to make sure that you're
that might have been a better temp image if I had done a new texture like this and then picked, instead of blank, picked like color grid.
Yeah,
it would give me, well, this is very low res, but it will give me.
You'll still be able to tell if it's in the right orientation, I think.
Yeah, so you can see it's going a certain direction.
The letters aren't displayed on there.
Yeah, I know, because it's so low res, but
Right.
you get the point. Just make sure it's upright. But that's the pro tip there. So I did re-export it, and I'm going to delete the one in our hubs room. Let me switch back to hubs, and let's check it out. Let's see what we got. Aha, that's already better, I can tell, even at its small size. So that camera is pointed at the screen area, and if Dom goes between them, you'll see it is showing him on this surface. But that camera could be anywhere. It could be pointed up at the sky. It could be pointed like other ideas, right? If you want to keep tabs on the whole scene, you could point it top down and get, you know, a bird's eye view of the whole space.
And one of the settings in Blender too is whether the camera is a perspective camera or an orthographic camera, and so you could create an orthographic projection too if that's a thing you want to like for a top-down view. That could be cool. There's lots of stuff you can do with it. And typically, you're not going to be like putting this into objects you're just going to drop into the space. I mean, you might, but like you might use this in an environment like we're doing here with these screens.
And like putting the camera somewhere else, like there, and then the screens elsewhere. And the other cool thing, and Dom, you can speak to this more, I guess, but as far as the performance overhead, it's definitely not trivial because it is rendering the whole scene again. But if you had like 50 screens showing that camera view, it doesn't really
multiple copies doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just once we've rendered it, it's just like any other material, really. It's not super expensive to render on surfaces, and so especially if you have a single mesh and you just have the UV maps on that mesh, like, you know, those two screens, I'm assuming in this environment are part of the same mesh, like the screens that are on the next to the stage there, like those are probably all part of the same mesh anyway, and so it's not even an additional draw call for each of the screens. It does have to be a separate material, so like the screens themselves are separate from the rest, you know, the rest of the stage and the ground and that sort of thing. But the two screens, you know, you could have 10 of them, and it's just still going to be all one draw call.
Right. Likewise, I could take the screen that I made already, and there you can see my head doesn't show. My head doesn't show, but if I go into my camera like this, it does. That's cool.
That's just like a quirk based on how we're rendering your own avatar right now. It's totally a thing that I'm going to fix. I just haven't done it yet.
So like Dom can't see his own head on there.
Right, exactly. But I do see Jim's head, and then like you said, if you go into like the inspect mode to look at your own avatar, then you will see it because then we are rendering your head. It's just a silly quirk, but I'll get to it.
Well, cool. So as I was playing with this, and Dom said, "Hey, try it out," you know, of course, I got kind of excited, and I was like, "Oh man, look at!" And then I realized when I was playing with this in hubs and moving it around, I started getting ideas about like, well, what if you treated it less like a camera and more like a mirror? You know, people get really excited about you know, other social VR things where you can see yourself in the mirror and stuff, and so that's definitely possible to do. And I wanted to pull in a few examples of some things that I tried out. And so this is just what I called simple mirror. Now the clipping distance, which I'll go back and talk about in a second, is set very low on this. So the camera is only rendering to a certain distance, and then anything beyond that it stops. And so that's why in this particular example, it's like white because it's actually just drawing the background of the scene, which happens to be just plain white. So by
scaling it, you actually are increasing the
right, because the camera itself is getting scaled, and so its distance is increasing. But there's basically a camera behind here pointed toward us, and so when I stand here, I see sort of like a mirror. And as I was playing with this, I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's like a mirror. You can get in front of it and talk about your avatar and change outfits and things like that. But it didn't really feel quite like a mirror because I was like, well, when you move your head left and right in a mirror, the background changes. It doesn't. Right. It's not just flat on a thing like this. And then started thinking, well, what if we could hack around that a little bit and try to make something interesting? And so I'll show you how I did this in a minute, but I tried this one that I called fancy mirror, which I think still works. So this one isn't quite like a mirror either. In this case, I made the draw distance a little more normal. But what is cool about this is the camera that's looking at you through the mirror in quotes, is set to billboard. And a billboard component is the thing that makes a thing always face you no matter where you go. And so I was like, what if I did that on the camera itself? And so as I move, you'll see that the camera actually is trying to always face me. Now, that's not really how a mirror works, right? You wouldn't see yourself in the mirror if you went all the way over here. But I was like, well, that's kind of interesting.
That's a really interesting effect that I wasn't expecting. Like when you said you added a billboard, I was like, yeah, well, we do have a billboard component, and so of course you can add it to the camera that's rendering to the surface, and it's a pretty interesting effect.
And what it made me realize was that it almost looked more like I was looking through it, like a portal. And so then that led to some experiments like this one. I'd made one that's just called magnifier, where the camera is where I am right now. Except I can move this around and it acts like a magnifying glass.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And if I move it up here and then slide it over, you see, oh, there's Dom, and now he's really big. Oh, it's actually like on him. And if I scale it up, you get a different sort of magnification.
And the reason this, I'm assuming the reason that this looks so bright relative to the other things is you probably have this one set to the emissive map as well. So it's rendering both as the base color and the emissive, and so it ends up being kind of blown out like that.
Yeah.
If you don't set an emissive map, I think it'll look more natural.
Like you're just looking straight through a thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so let me just pop back over to Blender really quick, just in case that's like confusing and you're like, what am I actually looking at here? So let's go, I have to find it. I'll go back in a second, but like here's the magnifier one. Let me
you gotta flip your.
I know, I gotta.
Yep, there you go.
I didn't want people just watching me do nothing in the file thing. So, so here is what's actually happening. It's the same setup as I just showed, more or less, except the camera is pointed toward the surface, and so like when you're in here, you're on this side looking through, but the camera itself is the child of a little empty, it's just a little helper that I called camera. Probably not the best name for that. And so it is the parent of the camera. So as I move the camera around, move this node around, the camera moves with it. But the reason I put it there, right where the surface is so that when you rotate, this is set to billboard. It has a billboard component on it, which you can see over here on the side. And that makes it always face you. So if I go over here, what's actually happening is this is trying to rotate to look the same way that I'm looking through there. And if I go up over here, then this is trying to, it's really hard to do. Then it's trying to do this and point up at me.
Yeah, and these using empties like this is actually a really it's going to become more and more common, I think, as we add more components. Because right now, not everyone knows you can add lots of the components that we have in hubs, like spawn points, waypoints, videos, all those sorts of things, directly in Blender. And typically, the way you'd want to do it is just to put it on an empty node. And there are a bunch of different kinds of empties you can add too. All it does is change the visual style of how they're rendered in the viewport there.
But some look like a cube, or some look like a circle. Or
so for spawn points, I like to use the arrow, the up pointing arrow, because that feels like a spawn point. This doesn't affect the export at all. This is just for when you're working in Blender. But yeah, using empties, you can do lots of interesting things. Like you're doing here, you're using this empty as a pivot point. For this camera,
because you can't change the pivot of a camera.
Exactly.
It's always right there at its eye, at that little point. So sort of hacking around that, and so that led to some interesting findings. So this is the way I did that lens. Now, when I did a mirror, what I found was it was really weird to because it's a camera pointing at you. and you're probably familiar with this using like a webcam, is like it wasn't moving like a mirror. I would move left and it would move right, and vice versa. And so I was like, oh wait, I actually need the image to be flipped. And so what I did to handle that was just go into the UV editor and flip the UVs around. I just scaled them -1 on the x-axis, and so it's still, the camera's still sending the same image, but at the end I'm flipping it onto the surface. And that's actually what we do with the little snapshot camera in hubs. When you're pointing it at yourself, we flip that image.
Yeah, the front facing one is flipped, and the reverse one is not flipped.
But then that got me thinking about, well, if it's just UVs, well, the UVs can be manipulated, and so that's kind of interesting. So I did a repeat example with this, the same like magnifier idea, except instead I did one where I edited the UV. So if you look at this, and I open it up, the UVs actually look like that. And if this were a class, I would say, does anybody in the class know what would happen by shrinking the UVs in the middle? You might say, oh, it's going to make the image smaller. And would they be right, Dom?
I was reading chat. I'm sorry.
It would be the opposite. It would actually make things bigger in the middle. It's opposite in UV space. So this one is identical to this kind of magnifier idea, except, let me switch back to Spoke so you can see it. Except instead, this one, the UVs are stretched, and so the illusion is that the image is an actual like fisheye lens in the middle, because we're bubbling out the UVs. And so, you start thinking about how you could use this, either maybe on an avatar or something else, to make an interesting look.
Someone in chat was also mentioning, sorry, that's why I was distracted. They were saying, what happened if you put the UV scroll on the video texture? And that totally should work. I haven't tried that, but there's no reason that shouldn't also work.
Yeah, it would just take whatever you're seeing here and just scroll it and repeat
across,
it.
Exactly. But then, with the stuff you've done with UV scrolls, I bet you can do some interesting weird.
Sure, and like this is distorting them fairly uniformly, like in the middle. But that means you could also make them kind of wobbly and wavy, like if you start moving the points around so that it looked like you were looking through like glass block or a shower door or something like that.
Yep.
But I thought this was kind of cool, and it made me want to make more types. Like this one was a little more interesting because it does the opposite. Like the middle is more straight, and then the edges are fisheyed. It's almost like you're looking through a convex lens or something. And it's not like it's more expensive or anything. It's just kind of cool.
And so you're showing this all on flat surfaces, but this also can apply to any, just literally, this is just a material. So this can apply to any, any 3D object you want.
And it's really cool because it ends up feeling like some kind of really fancy rendering effect, like a shader or something, but it's not. It's just some simple stuff. And then, I kept going with this and finding interesting things. Like I thought, well, what about a mirror where you don't have to move to see all sides of yourself? And I was like, you could make a mirror that basically was rotating around yourself. So in this case, the camera is where it was in the Blender file, but I'm animating that empty. Actually, yeah, I think I had an empty to just spin around in a circle. There might be a glitch in there at one point, but not so great animation.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. It's like if I wish my mirror did that. I could see the back of my head, or like when I left a tag on me recently. So yeah, that's just another use. And there is one more, Dom, that I didn't show you.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. I have this set up in another room already, but I might as well just show it here because it's pretty easy to do. Oh wait, no, sorry, there's a couple more. This one was similar. Dom said, he just mentioned this, you can put it on a 3D surface. So this cylinder actually ends up looking like it's refracting the light going through it, like a lens. Now this one's working a little bit differently. I'm doing the same thing with the camera. It's billboarding, so it wants to stay where your head is, except the cylinder itself is actually billboarding although you can't tell, so that the center of its texture is always right where you are. So I have a billboard component on both the camera and the object. So you're always seeing directly through the middle of it.
That's really cool.
That's just a neat effect. I haven't really seen what happens like if you rotate this. Oh, and you can see it has some shininess on it too. And I may have tinted this one a bit to be like slightly light blue or something.
Yeah, I mean, so that's worth pointing
Now
out.
it's
Like
billboarding
the
weird.
all the other material properties will carry through on this. So yeah, if you set like the surface color, like if you set it to something that's not white, it's gonna be multiplied against this texture. So that like this is literally just replacing the map on this material, either the base color map or the emissive map or both.
This one's pretty cool. I originally put this in the gathering space. It's pretty big, but this is 4 screens, and in the center you would stand, and there's a camera that's animated spiraling up and down through the scene, and showing us like we're on a dance floor, like moving around, which is kind of cool. So animating the camera is fun.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So like, you could do, oh, sorry, I have so many examples. I keep forgetting that. I did one with a security camera that follows you with a billboard.
Oh yeah, that one. I like that one. That one's cool.
Just let me find that really fast.
And so one cool thing is, so now that we have this video texture source component, we should be able to use this for other things too, like recording to a video, or like maybe setting the video texture source as the stream camera, like for when people are watching from the lobby, you can use that camera instead. There are lots of different things we can do with this.
So there's a billboard component on the not on the mount of the camera, but on the lower part, so it always points at you, which is a little unsettling. But then
it's kind of funny because for everyone, it's pointing at me and you at this. Like I'm seeing it pointing at me, you're seeing.
Right. If we could show Dom's screen, he would see it pointing at himself. And so it's showing an image of me wherever I go. And those don't necessarily have to be next to each other, of course. Mm-hmm. They could be apart from each other. And then all I did was add in my material for the screen, I added a mix RGB node in there to tint it green, so it looked a little bit night vision-y, just for fun. Maybe eventually we'll get some camera effects and things like that, but right now we don't have a lot of post-processing things happening. But then there was one more that I wanted to show, and this one I wanted to surprise you with, Dom, that I made last night.
All right, I'm excited.
I don't know. I think I'm building it up too much, maybe. But let's see. Where are they? They're in my...
People in chat are really excited about this stuff there.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. And feel free, if you have questions and things along the way. We're going to wrap up fairly soon, but...
They are asking if this is going to be a regular thing, us doing streams, and I hope so. We were doing them for a while, and we got busy, but hopefully we'll have a bunch of stuff to keep showing.
Yeah, this one I made a little mini scene with a plane flying through it, which you can see if you look down in the model. That's really hard to rotate this properly, but
that's like on the little...
Yeah, so if you look down in this model, there's a plane flying around. You see it?
I see it, yep.
A little red plane, and there's a camera behind it.
Wow.
That's parented to it, and the camera's showing you what the plane sees.
That's really cool.
And so
you
can make your little Westworld map or whatever.
Get my big head in here somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh, it eventually will fly by Dom's head. Oh, there it is. I saw it for a second. I was testing. I was spawning a duck and dropping it in there.
I think it's mostly flying through my head. There's the back of my head there.
There's the duck.
That's inside my head.
He's big. Let's shrink this duck down so he's not Godzilla. Well, he'll still be pretty damn big, and I'll put him down in here. I think it flies kind of right in there at some point.
I have to see if I can find the screenshot of the original. When I was originally testing this with Christian, I accidentally did a thing where...
There it goes. Oh, the duck. You flew right through the duck.
I spawned in the scene, and then Christian had spawned into the mini version of the scene, and we hadn't really, we weren't seeing each other, and we weren't sure why. And then I realized he was in the snow globe that I was holding.
That's funny.
Let's see if I can find a photo of it.
All right, it's gonna fly by the duck again if you want to see it. I know, very exciting, but
this is content right here.
There it goes. So I don't know. I was just trying to come up with different ideas and stretching this thing a little further, and it's really cool to see, you know, combining things like billboard component and the video texture component, and
Hey, I found
I'm
the
sure there are things that I haven't thought of yet, that you could try out, and I would love it if you guys would, you know, just play around with this a lot and share what you go to our show and tell channel in our Discord, and you know, even if they're just little simple tests like this, you could take a screen grab or post a
Mhm.
link to a room. We'll
or
check 'em
or
out.
like if it's a scene, you can bring it to the meetup and we'll check it
Yeah.
out. Yeah, if you look to your left, Jim, that's when I was testing it. So I looked inside the snow globe.
Wait,
And I
that's
was
your
like, I don't.
eyeball there, and
That's
your other
that's
guy.
my avatar exactly. Yeah, and because I couldn't find Christian, he's like, I'm standing right in front of the stage, and I was like, wait a minute, are you in the little scene? And then I poked my head in, and he's like, oh my god. So
That's great. That's great. Yeah, playing with scale is really cool, and of course, you know, even though it's not the most robust feature we have, you can do a slash shrink or slash grow command in the chat, which I find shrink works intermittently sometimes, and
oh
maybe
boy,
maybe I shouldn't have
maybe
talked
that
about
broke.
that.
Yeah, but
Oh, there
so
it
what
goes.
was
It worked.
what was interesting with that issue I had with not being able to find Christian, what it was is that the scene we had spawned in had spawn points in it, the model we had spawned in, and so then those are valid spawn points to spawn into. And so then when he refreshed, he loaded into
Oh, right.
one of the spawn points in the scene, because we were testing the scene inside the scene just to quickly check if the video texture target stuff was working, and so he had spawned in the scene that had spawn point components in it, and then ended up spawning inside of it, and so that's was kind of an interesting thing that happened.
Yeah, it can
Was
get
it?
really weird when you're dealing with scale that changes that much.
Yep, yep.
But
And he was confused because he was moving really fast. So our movement speed doesn't really account for your size correctly, and so he was like kind of zooming around the scene and was confused why.
right, yeah, one of the bugs with this shrink feature is like draw distance gets
Yeah.
weird. Similar to when you scale an object
Mhm.
with the camera in it, is like the draw distance gets scaled also, or not quite the same, and so we might need to alter our math a little bit to count for that. But either way, you can still do plenty with it. So, you know, if you ever wondered how can I get a screen that's curved, or how can I, you know, you can do whatever you want with this. You can put textures. You could put a video texture on that airplane, or put a video source on the airplane up there, and have it move around the scene and looking down at the scene like a blimp flying around, and you could show it on a screen somewhere. Yeah, it's just kind of limitless. There's a lot of ideas you could do.
Yep.
Was that it for today, Dom, or did you want to talk about some of the Blender component stuff, or we could save it for another stream? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, there's I guess we can quickly bring up that PR that I'm working on right now in Blender, in the Blender add-on. I'm adding a bunch more components that are worth playing with. I haven't even tested all of them yet. I'm just kind of adding them, and then gonna get to testing them. But so I've added like the particle system that we have in Spoke, the media frames, the MO colliders. So these are like the physics colliders we have. What else have I added in there? The skybox component.
I'm bringing it up on the screen now.
Yeah, so I have a list there, and I'm still working on this. But so I'm just kind of going through and looking like, okay, what are the things that we have available in GLTF files that we haven't exposed to Blender yet, and I'm just kind of going through and exposing them in the simplest way possible. Not all of them are going to necessarily work together, and it's kind of tricky. But yeah, I think the goal, my goal is, I think you should be able to build scenes entirely in Blender if that's the workflow you're going for. That'll also allow us to really kind of focus Spoke on. It's already kind of the case, but just kind of going forward, will continue to allow us to focus Spoke on being this kind of really easy to use. You don't really need 3D modeling knowledge. You don't need to know too much about, you know, what vertices are and meshes and all that sort of stuff. You know, you kind of bring a bunch of pieces together, either with the architecture kit or just pulling assets off of Sketchfab or other places you get models, and then building a scene. But then for people who are more advanced and want to kind of dig more deep into this stuff, we have the Blender workflow, and that will, you know, that'll allow us, like, for example, if it ever comes up like, okay, well, should we add this to Spoke? I think it'll allow us to really easily make those decisions, because like Spoke, if you're talking about like should I be able to edit the vertices or something? It's like, no, like if you want to go do that, like Spoke is not a model editor. It's like a scene composition tool. And so that's how it is in my head right now anyway. And so I think by exposing more of this stuff to Blender, it allows us to like, still add all this like kind of rich functionality, these advanced features, but not make Spoke this like confusing thing that no one's going to know how to use. Because I think the fact that people can jump into Spoke and make a scene like literally knowing nothing about 3D modeling is huge, and like we see people doing that all the time. And especially with like the kits, the architecture kit that you put together, and like the modular gallery that Christian put together, like people are creating scenes that they just definitely would not be able to do.
Right. And we don't really want to lose that. We don't want to
no, exactly,
make it so complex that it's just, somebody opens it and immediately closes it because it's like, I don't want to learn this.
But so what's really cool with the Blender workflow is just by having just all these like Lego pieces, like you said, you can kind of combine them together in ways that are, we're not even expecting. Like I said, when I built this video texture target thing, I was not thinking about billboarding the camera and creating a mirror or a magnifying glass. Certainly, like that was not on my mind at all. And so it's really cool to see that you did that. And then yeah, like animating it, all the stuff kind of as we add more pieces, the whole thing becomes more powerful, and that's really cool.
Awesome. Well, unless there are more questions for today, I think we're probably going to wrap up the stream. We're almost at an hour here, so. Yeah, we really look forward to seeing what the community does with this and how you're using it. And, doesn't mean there won't be bugs along the way if you find things that, or just, even small little paper cut type bugs that would make it easier to use or just, definitely hit us up in our Discord, let us know, or, add to the GitHub issues and things. So
Yep.
plenty of ways to reach us.
If you missed the beginning part of the stream or you want to rewatch any of it, it'll be up on the Twitch VODs, but then also we usually upload it to our YouTube channel and kind of cut it up into smaller pieces so that you can find it. I love how often people mention the kind of the previous streams we've done. I was like, oh, I was like learning how to do this, or I learned how to make an avatar with previous streams, and so I hope that this one's helpful too.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here. So. Yeah, I guess that's it. I never know how to end these except to say goodbye and, thanks. But we really appreciate the community. I know we've, hubs between the new UI, and there's been a lot of changes lately, even personnel changes and things. But, we're still going strong, and we are still, making new stuff all the time and trying to bring it to you in a timely way and as stable as we can. And yeah, we really look forward to doing another one of these and seeing you guys. Thanks for everybody on the chat for participating and adding kind words and questions and things. It's been great. Any final thoughts, Tom?
I got nothing. That's it.
All right. Well, everybody, I'll use this sign-off time to say stay safe, keep wearing your masks. I know we're in this weird pandemic, and get the vaccine. Come on.
Yep.
Dom, if you don't mind me sharing, you got your vaccine. I'm half vaccinated. I'll be there in another week. But yeah, stay safe, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.